You notice the warning signs fast, but somehow your heart still keeps negotiating. You see the contradiction, feel the tension, and still stay longer than makes sense. It is not because you're naive, weak, or hopelessly addicted to broken people. It's usually because your mind learned early that danger and connection could arrive together. So when someone feels wrong and familiar at the same time, your system gets confused. Part of you wants peace, and another part wants to finally get the ending right. That is why red flags do not always push you away. Sometimes they pull you closer. Because what should feel like a warning can also feel strangely like home. And that is the part people misunderstand about emotionally aware, deeply sensitive adults. They assume seeing red flags should make leaving easy, immediate, and almost automatic. But insight is not the same thing as freedom. You can understand a pattern clearly and still feel trapped inside its emotional gravity. You can know someone is bad for you and still crave their approval. You can recognize disrespect and still ache when they pull away. That contradiction frustrates people who have never had to survive love by reading danger. But for some people, reading danger was the first form of intimacy they ever learned. They became experts at tone changes, subtle withdrawal, and silent emotional weather shifts. They learned to track people's moods the way other children tracked playground rules. Not because they were dramatic, because staying emotionally alert kept them safe. So later in life, red flags do not register as simple deal breakers. They register as data. Data to analyze, decode, explain, and possibly fix before things get worse. That is why some people can't ignore red flags even when everyone else seems relaxed. Their nervous system notices what other people dismiss as small, awkward, or harmless. The delayed text feels loaded. The joke feels too sharp. The smile doesn't match the eyes. And while other people move on, your mind keeps replaying the moment. Not because you're overthinking for fun, because something inside you has learned that details can become damage. You don't just hear what people say. You hear what leaks through it. You hear resentment hiding inside politeness. You hear boredom hiding inside reassurance. You hear control hiding inside concern. That kind of perception can make you look suspicious, guarded, or impossible to please. But often, you're simply catching emotional truth before it becomes obvious to everyone else. The problem is that noticing danger early does not always mean trusting yourself early. A lot of sensitive people grew up being taught to doubt their own perception. They were told they were too emotional, too intense, too dramatic, or too hard to satisfy. So now when they spot a red flag, two voices appear immediately. One says, "Something is off here." The other says, "Maybe you're making a big deal out of nothing again." That second voice is expensive. It keeps people in conversations that already feel depleting. It keeps them explaining away disrespect because they want to seem fair. It keeps them granting extra patience to people who keep taking more than they give. And over time, that creates a painful kind of self-betrayal. You see the truth, then slowly talk yourself out of it, until the pattern becomes undeniable. Until your body starts dreading their name on your phone. Until your chest tightens before the date, the meeting, or the family dinner. Until exhaustion confirms what your mind kept trying to soften. This happens in dating all the time. Someone says all the right things, but their energy feels slightly off. They compliment you, but it lands like possession instead of admiration. They ask personal questions fast, but never really answer yours. They apologize beautifully, but their behavior never changes in the same direction. And because you noticed early, you keep hoping early awareness will protect you. But awareness without action becomes a front row seat to your own disappointment. You start gathering evidence instead of choosing peace. You become a private investigator in your own relationship. You reread messages, study timing, compare tone, and look for emotional consistency. You are not trying to be paranoid. You are trying to feel safe enough to relax. That is the hidden psychology here. People who cannot ignore red flags are often not obsessed with negativity. They are obsessed with reducing uncertainty. Because uncertainty was never neutral for them. It was the hallway before yelling, the silence before punishment, the smile before embarrassment, the calm before emotional whiplash. So now, even as adults, mixed signals do not feel casual. They feel dangerous. And strangely, danger can become magnetic when your system mistakes familiarity for chemistry. That is why some people feel deeply drawn to unpredictable partners. Not because chaos is exciting in a glamorous way, Because chaos feels emotionally legible. It feels like a puzzle they already know how to solve. Stable affection can even feel suspicious at first. Kindness can seem flat. Consistency can feel unfamiliar. And unfamiliar does not always register as safe. Sometimes it registers as boring, fake, or emotionally distant. That does not mean you want pain. It means your body may trust what is practiced more than what it deserves. So when a red flag appears, you do not always run. Sometimes you lean in harder. You start listening more closely, caring more deeply, and trying more intelligently. You think if you stay attentive enough, you can prevent the collapse. You think if you word things carefully, they will finally understand your heart. You think if you love with enough precision, the red flag will become a misunderstanding. And sometimes that hope comes from a very old place. A place that still believes love can be earned by emotional labor. A place that confuses endurance with devotion. A place that learned leaving feels guiltier than suffering. That is why people who notice red flags often become experts at rationalizing them. They say, maybe they're just stressed. Maybe they had a hard childhood. Maybe they don't know how to communicate yet. Maybe they're scared of intimacy. Maybe if I stay calm, they'll feel safe enough to stop hurting me. And yes, sometimes wounded people do need patience. But patience is not supposed to cost your self-respect. Understanding someone's pain does not require volunteering as its landing place. Compassion becomes self-abandonment the moment you stop including yourself in the equation. This shows up outside romance too. At work, you notice the manager who flatters upward but humiliates downward. You notice the coworker who jokes cruelly, then calls everyone else sensitive. You notice how certain meetings leave you mentally foggy for hours afterward. In friendships, you feel the one-sidedness before anyone names it. You hear the subtle competition underneath support. You notice who only reaches out when they need emotional fuel. In families, you can sense the old roles reactivating before dinner even starts. You know who will dominate the room. You know who will play victim. You know exactly when your body will go quiet to keep the peace. And that constant noticing can become exhausting. Because people think being perceptive is only a gift. They rarely talk about how tiring it is to keep seeing what others deny. It can make social life feel like emotional translation work. It can make rest feel hard because your mind keeps scanning after the interaction ends. It can make loneliness feel preferable to confusing company. And honestly, that preference makes sense sometimes. Solitude is easier than being around people who disturb your nervous system in subtle ways. Being alone can feel cleaner than constantly second-guessing your own discomfort. That does not mean we're antisocial. It means peace has become precious. But there is another layer to this. Some people cannot ignore red flags because they believe danger proves depth. If someone is complicated, moody, withdrawn, or hard to reach, they feel more significant. Not better. Just more emotionally loaded. And emotional intensity can feel meaningful when you've spent years craving real connection. So easy love gets overlooked while difficult love gets romanticized. You tell yourself the tension means there is something rare here. You tell yourself the confusion means feelings must be deep. You tell yourself the inconsistency means they are secretly scared because they care. But confusion is not intimacy. An emotional instability is not evidence of a profound bond. Sometimes, a red flag is not a mystery. It is simply information. Information that your body already understood before your mind started writing excuses. That is why healing is not just about spotting red flags faster. A lot of people already do that. Healing is about changing what you do with what you notice. It is about trusting the signal before the full disaster arrives. It is about believing discomfort sooner. It is about letting your body's early wisdom count as real evidence. That can feel terrifying at first, because leaving early feels rude when you were trained to explain everything compassionately. Setting boundaries feels harsh when you were rewarded for being endlessly understanding. Walking away feels selfish when your identity was built around being patient. But there is a difference between kindness and self-erasure. And many thoughtful people were taught to confuse the two. So they stay in situations that slowly dim them. They keep giving clean language to people who keep offering messy behavior. They become emotionally articulate in places where basic care is still missing. And then they blame themselves for being tired. But the exhaustion is not random. It comes from trying to stay emotionally honest inside emotionally dishonest environments. It comes from carrying both perception and denial at the same time. It comes from feeling a red flag, then forcing a smile over it. That split drains people deeply, because every ignored warning creates inner friction. Your mind says, keep being fair. Your body says, please get me out of here. Your heart stays in the middle, trying not to disappoint either side. That is a heavy way to live, especially for people who already feel everything intensely. The good news is not that you'll stop seeing red flags. You probably won't. If anything, your sensitivity may keep getting sharper. But sharper does not have to mean sadder. It can mean cleaner, quieter, more decisive. It can mean noticing the signal and no longer turning it into a life project. It can mean respecting the first flinch in your body. It can mean letting inconsistency disqualify someone before your imagination starts rescuing them. It can mean learning that peace is not empty. Peace is accurate. And once you really understand that, something changes. You stop trying to prove your wisdom by enduring what hurts. You stop translating disrespect into complexity. You stop confusing your empathy with infinite capacity. You realize being able to see red flags was never the real problem. The real problem was believing you had to stay and study them. Because not every warning is an invitation to heal someone. Some warnings are simply asking you to leave. That is not failure. That is self-trust. And for people who spent years doubting their own instincts, self-trust feels revolutionary. It feels quiet at first, almost anticlimactic. No big speech, no dramatic ending, just a smaller tolerance for what drains you, just a calmer relationship with your own discomfort, just a growing refusal to call your intuition irrational when it keeps being right. That is how your life starts changing. Not through perfect confidence, but through repeated moments of private honesty. You notice the flag. You believe yourself. You respond earlier. You recover faster. And little by little, you stop building intimacy around warning signs. You start building it around steadiness, around warmth that does not confuse you, around conversations that do not leave you replaying every word, around people whose presence does not require emotional detective work. That kind of love can feel strange if chaos raised you. But strange is not always wrong. Sometimes strange is what health feels like before it becomes familiar. So if you are someone who cannot ignore red flags, do not shame yourself. Your mind was trying to protect you. Your body was trying to warn you. Your heart was trying to make sense of what it hoped could still be safe. There is nothing foolish about wanting to believe in people. There is only a cost when believing them means abandoning yourself. And maybe that is the shift you have been needing. Not better excuses. Not better analysis. Just a deeper loyalty to what you already feel. Because the most powerful thing about your sensitivity was never your ability to spot danger. It was your ability to finally stop calling danger love.